He said over and over again, this only ends one way.
Did you believe him?
I did. I did.
The proudest moment of my life will be when I'm presented in court and charged with a capital felony crime. That will be the pinnacle of defying the legal and judicial authority of Connecticut.
It all happened in July 2009 after Shankman kidnapped her at gunpoint and held her hostage for hours inside the South Windsor home they once shared.
I was the classic victim who first didn't want to admit things were not quite normal, who kept trying to question my own perceptions. I kept asking myself, is this really abuse? Am I overreacting?
Are we talking verbal abuse? Are we talking psychological, physical abuse? What was happening?
A lot of verbal abuse, a lot of emotional abuse, financial abuse. A lot of it just comes down to control.
You gotta understand, you're not in charge. I'm in charge. She has to die. She has to die right now.
Did you think that you were going to die that day?
I did. I did. I prayed a lot that day. And there were times during the day when I thought, whatever, it's working. He's calming down. I can talk him out of this. Or somebody's going to be here and rescue us before he does something.
Breaking news tonight in South Windsor, where police are on the scene of a standoff. A woman is being held in a house by her estranged husband. NBC 30's Doug Green joins us live with the latest right now. Doug.
Lisa, this is a divorce case gone very bad. This woman was, as you say, supposed to be in a hearing today in her long-running divorce. Instead, she's being held in a house down around the bend there by her husband.
When Nancy Tyler's lifeless body is lying on a slab in Farmington at the morgue and the coroner is digging 2 hollow point bullets out of her head, I will have made my point.
Every day of his life will be spent dreaming up a new line of attack. We will never be safe. My children and I will spend our lives looking over our shoulders.
There wasn't always turmoil at home.
No, there was not.
In order to have married your husband, obviously, your ex-husband, he hadn't shown this side of himself. How long after you were married did you start to see?
It took a few years. In the beginning, it was pleasant and fun and challenging, and I was dealing with someone who could be very charming and was very successful and very charismatic, certainly in public, but at home, all of that drops away. As time went on, the control became more binding, more pervasive. His inclination to try to hide his controlling nature just went away.
This court in the state of Connecticut has never encountered anybody as dangerous, ruthless, or vindictive as me. Nancy knows how deranged I am.
Every officer that steps foot on this property has to understand it's a suicide mission. I'm leaving this property in a body bag.
Throughout his cross-examination of Nancy Tyler, defense attorney Hugh Keefe repeatedly used the word crazy, part of his effort to convince jurors Richard Shankman is not guilty by reason of insanity.
Does he have a gun? Yeah. Is it pointed at you right now? Yeah. Does he have explosives in the room with him? I don't know.
Take me back to July 7th, 2009. How did that day start for you?
The divorce was final. The last hearing was that day. So I left my office. I went down to the parking garage where my car was parked underground. And I came out of the elevator, and there he was. He came out from behind the elevator bank and grabbed me.
Tyler's friend, Suzanne Arnold, was on the phone with her when Shankman approached.
I heard him from in the background saying, "Nancy, I just need to talk."
And what was Nancy's reaction?
She immediately said, "Richard, get away from me."
What went through your mind when he grabbed you?
It was terror. It was sheer terror at that time. And I screamed into the phone to my friend, "He's here, call the police. He's got a gun." I was on autopilot, I think, for quite a while, just trying to not make a move.
It had to have been terrifying.
It was extremely terrifying. It was take your breath away, heart pounding. just breathe kind of a day.
He put you in a car.
My car was sitting there. That's where I was going to go to court, and he forced me to the car and forced me into the driver's seat, and he got in the back seat and said, "Now drive. Get us out of here." He directed me to drive to the home where we had lived together as a family.
The Capital Region Emergency Services team swarmed Tumblebrook Drive, surrounding the suspect's house while negotiators talked to the man on the phone. Police evacuated surrounding homes, and after a couple of hours, they expanded their perimeter.
There was a threat to use explosive devices, saying that the house may be rigged with explosives, and so we're taking appropriate precautions just in the event that that is true.
The suspect's name is Richard Shankman. He faces arson charges and forgery charges and other issues related to the divorce. The victim is a Hartford malpractice attorney by the name of Nancy Tyler. Negotiations continue. Police say they have evacuated about a dozen families away from the house here on Tumblebrook Drive.
This went on for you for 12, I've got to believe, excruciating hours.
There were moments in there where the adrenaline was running so high in me, I could barely breathe, and then there were times when things were calm. But what that does to you is it takes you outside of yourself, I think. The only way to survive in that situation is to sort of be an observer of the situation. I talked with him and tried to negotiate with him all day long. And what it was doing to me is it was just wearing me down.
Was anything working?
Things worked for a little while, and then he would go crazy again. He would be on the phone, or he would see something on TV that would enrage him, and he would start pacing and running and threatening and yelling and screaming, and then he would calm down again.
Just trying to make sure you've really got it going right. Tell us. Okay, now do you believe him? What did he do? He shot the gun.
Tyler testified she thought she would die that day. She says he twice fired his gun during the ordeal and tried a third time while aiming right at her, but the gun jammed. At one point, Shankman dragged her to the basement and handcuffed her to the wall.
And he handcuffed me to the eyeball, and I was screaming at that point, saying, please don't, Richard. Please don't chain me up down here.
Please have them get off the property as fast as possible. Okay. Are you injured? No. Okay, does he have any weapons? That's just pointed at me right now.
There was no way for people to get to us without risking far more than just me, because of the threats of explosions and the threats of fire. And by the end of the day, I had reached the point of thinking, the only one who's going to get me out of here is me.
You did make it out that day.
I did.
How did you do it?
12 hours in, it was nighttime, and I think it was coming to the end, because everything everybody had tried had not worked. He was screaming at the hostage negotiator on the phone, and they were getting too close, I think. They were getting close to breaking into the house, and that seemed to make him frantic.
You're gonna be dead. In about 20 seconds. I'll count to 20. 1, 2, you gotta get that thing off.
The hostage negotiator had said something to him about how are we going to end this. Something she said prompted him to run upstairs, and I knew at that point this was it. This was my last chance. It was one of the only times I was alone without him all day long, without him absolutely hovering over me. And I was able to unscrew the screw that he had in the wall, that he had handcuffed me to a screw in the wall, and I was able to unscrew it, and I ran. I stopped at the door, and I remember thinking, is it going to blow? I either go die with a gun to my head, or I go out the door and I die, or maybe I don't. And I opened the door, and I stood there for a minute to try to see what I could see, and I ran across the yard. The only alternative I had was to go out the door, because otherwise I was in the house and he was on his way back down to the basement.
You didn't have many choices.
I didn't have any choice. And it was a take a deep breath, open the door and run. I've been given this opportunity. I've got to go because this may be my last chance. And I can't just sit there passively and let him kill me. I knew the police were out there. I knew my family was close by. I knew if I could get myself out, they would take care of me.
We want to get an update on that breaking news we've been following all day out of South Windsor, where a 12-hour hostage situation has come to a fiery end. NBC 30's Monica Buchanan joins us live from South Windsor with the very latest. Monica.
Keisha, yeah, still a very active scene on Tumblebrook Drive here in South Windsor. That's the scene of a day-long standoff that continues at this hour. Now, we want to show you some video that was taken from the scene just a little bit ago. That is the home of a man named Richard Shankman. It is believed that he is still inside. Earlier in the day, his ex-wife, Nancy Tyler, was also inside. She was being held hostage. Fortunately, she was safely released around 8:30 today. Now, that fire erupted about an hour after Tyler's release. Now, Tyler is, again, the ex-wife of Richard Shankman, who is still believed to be inside the home at this hour. Now, while we were on scene, we heard several gunshots go off. We also heard officers come over a PA system asking Shankman to come out with his hands up. But again, at this hour, we are not quite sure of his condition. We can tell you, though, it is still a very active scene on Tumblebrook Drive here in South Windsor.
There's nothing else to do. Well, what do you mean? Well, the house is on fire. I can see and smell it.
You could try and save yourself.
I can't.
Your initial reaction to making it out of that house, making it to the hospital, knowing that you're alive and you're safe.
I was still outside myself for a long time. I was still observing what was happening and thinking, is this real? Am I alive? Am I really safe? Is he going to get out of there and come after me or us? Or when I heard the house was on fire, I was panicked, thinking he had escaped and was going to go after somebody else to get back at me because he lost me. And then it was relief. And as my family got to the hospital, my kids, my friends, realizing that I was safe, that they were safe, I started to breathe again. I mean, I think there were long periods of time that day where I just wasn't even breathing. And it took a while for me to come back into being just present. I think anybody in that kind of situation tries to be brave, tries to be in control, has some denial going on, and over all of that is terror.
You find the defendant guilty, or not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect?
No.
Richard Shankman found guilty on all counts, including kidnapping and arson. Shankman's attorneys tried the insanity defense, but the jury didn't buy it.
You know, I'm disappointed in the verdict. I can't say I'm surprised, though, because the insanity defense is something you use as the defense of last resort when there really is nothing else.
Nancy would just like me to express her relief that this is over with, that she has her life back, and to thank the jurors, as do I, for their hard work and seeing through what we consider to be a bogus mental defense.
During his sentencing hearing, Richard Shankman told Judge Julia Dewey he's still determined to kill his ex-wife, Nancy Tyler. Outside, she commented on his courtroom rant.
It was not unexpected, and it was pretty much what I've been living with for the last 5 or 6 years. So we've moved on.
All you have to do is just put your gun down and walk out the door and everything.
And what for? What would be the point of that?
Because you got a lot more to live for than just...
I don't.
Huh?
I don't.
You don't?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't have Nancy. I don't have a life. I don't have a job. I don't have any money.
Do you have anybody? Do you care about anybody?
Just Nancy.
Just Nancy. So, do you think this is how Nancy's going to want you to do it?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I do.
I heard it in her voice when she talked to me. Every time she talked to me, she wasn't worried just about herself. She was worried about you.
Yeah.